So I'm just going to start, Rob. It's been 7 years since you released the first Sanctuary album, probably 9 years since you started writing it. Did you expect to be creating a fourth, and did you have some kind of master plan for this series?
No, none at all, really. Say when I made the first one, I had no idea if people would like it, accept it, and it was done sort of with no idea if anybody would buy it, if there'd be any more on it, really. I just made the first album, and when I listened back, I thought this is pretty good. But I sent it to Tom then, really, and because I wanted to check, that it worked, because I was so close to it, the first album. And I think Tom was one of the sort of people I thought was closest to the sort of style of music that would say if it was worthy of being released. And to be honest, Tom had it in his hands. If he turned around and said it was a pile of rubbish, I wouldn't have released it. But he said it was, he liked it. You could see the potential in it, and that they worked as a standalone piece of music, really. So, and then the second, and then the third, and I went on to the sort of fourth part of it, which is hopefully a little bit different, really, to the other three.
Yeah, I certainly feel it's quite different from the pieces I've heard. I think you've really ramped it up another level from the first three, which I think is quite remarkable given the standard you set for those first three albums. But one of the things that interests, I think, a number of people is you have a number of these different musical personas. Magenta, Cyan, Chimpanzee, the Sanctuary series, Compendium, and other collaborative projects. How do you manage to switch between them all for each new project?
Well, I actually like the fact that I've got these other styles of music and releases, because if I was just doing one style of music all the time, I get bored, really, and I need to sort of go away from it, clean my musical palette, and then come back fresh with a bit of enthusiasm, really, for the next album in that style. And it gives me time to sort of be away from it, think of ideas for the next album. And I just enjoyed in so many different styles of music, really. I think, there's a common thread to them all. I think with the sort of, melody is king, really. That's with everything for me, really. It's got to be about the tune, the melody. And, but I say, I just enjoy, I listen to so many different styles of music and get influenced by so many different styles of music that I like to sort of do it, different styles of albums. And as I said, it just gives me a chance to sort of break away from that. Because if I just do it all the time, I repeat myself, I think. So it's nice to go somewhere else, completely forget about what you've done, and come back afresh.
Yeah, it's like having a like a sorbet after one of the courses. If you have a fine dining dinner, they bring you a sorbet just to kind of cleanse your palate,
Yeah.
ready for the next course. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And you mentioned you've got some common threads going through the albums. I mean, I think everybody is familiar with your Mike Oldfield influence, but I wanted to just touch on your collaborations because they're a key thread through the Sanctuary series with people like Tom and Les who are on the call this evening. Also, Simon Phillips, the drummer. What makes you, or why do you approach certain people to collaborate with them on a project like this? What do you think they bring to the project? And do you see them as an essential ingredient to what it is you're trying to achieve with the project?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've always said that it doesn't matter who you are as an artist, you've got to have someone else that you respect. You've got to have people you respect that can tell you you've been an arse and that you can do better. I think that, a lot of musicians, well-known musicians, they're so surrounded by yes people, you can see their artistic output going through the floor, really. But I like having Tom and Les to have these two sort of angels on my shoulder telling me, I can do better, or, Tom will scream at me and destroy me. But then I think, you're doing it for the best. And Les is my sort of confidant, and, we discuss lots of things. So both of them really helped me to go forward with it. I think if I was left to my own devices, I'd never decide on anything. And I say on this album, I think both Les and Tom have really been involved in it a lot more. Les with the story and with the music as well. With both of them, I'd send them ideas of what I had, and I get replies saying, "Oh, it's okay," and okay means it's got to be binned, really. I think everybody needs someone to push them to go that extra mile, really, even if it means erasing 5 minutes of something you've worked on for months. If you can do better, and it's normally revealed then, that so between the three of us, I think this album, that there's not an ounce of fat on it, because anything that couldn't survive Les, Tom, and me has been binned, really. So, it's been, I'm a lucky boy, really, to have both of them to influence me and to as a soundboard for ideas and things. But Tom and Les have both got sort of different musical tastes, so I get the best of both worlds, really. And it can hurt on times being told you can do better, but then I listen to it, I listen back and think, yeah, you're right, really. And what's been great with this one, say with Tom, is that I would send him them. I would finish the record to a point, the track, send Tom the multi-track stems. Tom wouldn't know what was the most important instrument on it. So he would come into it, put up the stems on his multi-track, and wouldn't know how he was meant to be put together, but would do his own interpretation of it. And when I had it back, I'd be like, oh my God, the lead guitar is gone, or the bass is gone, or this is gone. And I think, oh my God, it's much better. It's so much better. I forgot to send him some of the stems, some of the times. And then you do a mix, and I think, oh my God, it doesn't need all that waffle on it. And then I can take all those great ideas and put them into the mix. And on this record, there's two complete versions. There's my version, the BBC mix, the sort of everything's perfect mix, and then there's Tom's authentic, real, raw version. And I think it's I say I just feel really lucky, really, to have both of them working with me. And and obviously Simon plays drums on it, and that goes without saying. You know, the moment I get them sent through, you know, I sat there at like 2 o'clock in the morning listening to these tracks being sent as he would record them in America. And I just go back to, you know, to me sitting in the Wembley Arena in 1980, whatever it was, at the 10th anniversary, thinking, I'd never have this guy playing on my records. And he did. So, and it sounds amazing. So I just said, I'm very lucky.
No, I agree. I think having seen some of the evolution of the album myself, I think it's ramped up, you know, from those early demos 2 or 3 years ago to what you have now is it's completely transformed and taken to another level. So, you know, I'm sure you can't wait to get it out into the public domain. But you mentioned there about having different levels of involvement with the project, and as we'll hear about a little bit later, Les has been involved in some of the backstory and to the album. What about the cover? We saw a snapshot of the cover when we were playing the piece earlier on. Is there a backstory to the cover? Does that reflect the music?
It does. And I think Les will, when we come to Les, he can have that one to answer
Okay, right.
what it all means, because I don't really know.
No.
I got a rough idea, but I daren't say what I think it is because it could be completely wrong. So I think
Right.
that Les later on. But the cover's been a nightmare. Well, you know, because again, we went through 3 or 4 different artists for the cover because it had to be the right feel, and we knew how we wanted the cover to represent the music with the style. And we had people, you know, some doing like fine art drawings and all this kind of stuff. And it was always wrong. But the artist we found is a girl, Anna, who lives in America. And she just perfectly got the exact feel. So that, you know, I just love the cover. I think it just so represents the music. But again, it had to be right. And that's taken us like, God, a year and a half to find the right person to do it. And lots of false starts, really. But yeah, Les will explain later now what it's all about.
Yeah, I will hand over to Les in a moment. And I guess, you know, for everybody listening that maybe isn't a musician or hasn't seen or experienced the journey of an album like this, you know, these things take, you know, a significant amount of time to put together. And I know from the conversations we've had, Rob, this is more than probably 3 years in the making, or certain components of it are more than 3 years in the making. And it probably astounds people to hear that a cover has taken maybe a year and a half to put together. But of course, you know, if you want to create that perfect project, you need to, you know, work hard and you need to, you know, discard stuff in order to move forward. So with that in mind, I was wondering, given now we're at number 4 in the Sanctuary series, and somebody's just asked when it's going to be released. So it's going to be released, is it in October?
Yeah, 15.
Yeah, so it's going to be released in October 15, and pre-orders will be available later on today from the Tiger Moth shop website. But I just wanted to ask you, what's the essence of a Sanctuary album to you? Do you have a set of common components or common things that must go into a Sanctuary album to make it a Sanctuary album for you, and to be able to give it that Sanctuary name?
Yeah, it's in the title itself. But when I made the first record, the whole idea of it being called Sanctuary was because when I was like a teenager growing up, going through all the pains of being a teenager and all this kind of stuff, locking myself in the bedroom and all this kind of stuff, I would listen to Mike Oldfield's music, and that was my sanctuary. You know, I could turn the lights off, go into the music, and you go inside the speakers and you'd be in another world, and you put headphones on at night. And it was a sanctuary from all the bad things, and that is what this music is meant to be. It's where you can go to escape all the madness that's going on in the world, really. You meant to put your headphones on and lose yourself for an hour. And the battle, as I've said this loads of times, you know, the easy bit, when I listen to Mike Oldfield's music, it's easy to sound like Mike Oldfield. Anybody can buy a 20 quid guitar pedal and sound like Mike Oldfield. The hard bit is getting the emotion in the tunes and writing the tunes. And this is something where, you know, when I speak to Tom about it, and with the first record, I think he recognized that he was more than just a fanboy making a record in, you know, a cloned album. There's lots of that, and anybody can do that. The hard bit and the bit I battle to do, and when I know when it works, when the hairs go up on your back of your neck, that's the battle, and that's what these records trying to do, what I'm trying to do with these records, is if I succeed in that, then I'm happy, really. And so that's a sort of, that's what it's got to have. But then going, talking about the actual the influences, I would say that, there's not just Mike Oldfield influences on these records. I find the same sort of emotional contact, like Ennio Morricone and David Bedford, and a lot of the classical players. They all managed to nail this emotional connection, through instrumental music, and it doesn't have to have lyrics. If the guitar or the keyboards or the solo voice is connected on an emotional front, that works for me. And that's what I think, that's the ingredients on this series of albums and styles and things. That's what I'm striving for and hopefully achieving.
I think that's a really good I think synopsis of what it means probably to many of us listening on the call this evening. And you mentioned there about the Oldfield influence, and I know that you've spoken about this a number of times.
Yeah.
And it's also created, I think, some interaction with Oldfield fans who feel that perhaps you're stepping into territory where perhaps you shouldn't. But clearly, it's a key part of the Sanctuary series, and personally, I think, and maybe many others on the call think, it's done with a deference and respect. How do you feel about that now?
To be honest, I'm bored of it, really. Because I moved on from the first. When I put the first album out, I knew that I would have a little bit of nonsense, really. But the thing that got me to make the first record was reading that Mike Oldfield said that he'd made these albums and absolutely nobody had carried on making this style of music. So for me, it was like, well, I'll do that. I'll do what you want, kind of thing, almost, in some respects. And I thought it was that. And I'm looking around and thinking, well, nobody's making this music. It's going to die. If I don't do this style of music, it's not going to be carried on. So I did it with the utmost respect, and it was like, it was total admiration for what he'd achieved. And I was going to do something, and then it was obvious, that some Mike Oldfield fans are very protective of the music, and so am I to his music. I love his music. It means a lot to me. But what I did and what I'm doing is with the utmost respect, really, and it really sort of, I find it hard sometimes. I guess such personal abuse, but as I said, I'm used to it, really, because the majority of people, I have people messaging me saying how much the music means to them, really deeply connecting to them, and that's all that overrides the minority of people who want to have a crack at me for doing it. You know what I mean? My question is it any good? Not, does it sound a little bit like Michael? Is it any good? If you listen to it, without looking at who it is, if you listen to the music, does it work? And if it works, that's all you can ask, really. But, don't be swayed by the label on it. You know what I mean? But it's not. It'll never stop me, because I get messages from people, which make me want to do it. And get me through the dark moments of making these records, because I get messages, people saying I bought the record, and I love it, and it means so much to me, and very personal messages that the connection I had to Mike Oldfield's music, they get into mine, and that's all I can ask for, really.
Yeah, that's job done, really, isn't it? And I think that there are probably many people, including probably the majority, if not all the people on this call, who respect you, I think, for keeping that genre alive. Because I know when I first started listening to Oldfield's music, I wanted to find out if anybody else was doing that, and actually there was precious few people who were creating that long form, complex instrumental music that got me captivated when I first heard it. And so I think what you're trying to do is absolutely laudable. And we thank you for putting that together. And on that note, I think it's probably time to play another extract from the album. So I'm just going to do that now. Oh, there we go. That was
Of
a
the
nice
hits.
extract there from part one of the Ringmaster.
Paul,
Yes.
yeah, does anybody else get that terrible background noise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you all got that?
Yes, there is a little bit of hiss. I thought it was coming from Rob's mic, but I'm not sure where it's coming from. I think everybody is muted apart from us three. So perhaps whilst we are not talking, then we should mute as well, just
Okay.
to stop
Yeah,
that.
no.
Okay. So great. Thank you for answering all those questions, Rob. We'll come back. We've got a few more at the end from some of the folks that have come
Okay.
along this evening. So I'd like just to bring Les into the conversation now. You mentioned earlier on, Rob, that Les had played a key role, particularly in terms of the backstory to the Ringmaster. And for those that those on the call, Les has written a story which has kind of morphed together with the album. So Les, I wanted to ask you how that story came about and how you came to work with Rob and get that included as part of this this new Sanctuary album.
A lot in that there, Paul. I can only answer a bit of that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been meeting up quite often long before this COVID began. We were in one of our favourite meeting places, the Blue Boar in Hay. Lovely fire, all the rest of it, cake and tea. And I had this idea about a ringmaster, this guy who controlled our emotions, a musician, but it didn't come full form. It was just an idea, but within a very short time, I knew, and Rob did too, that this was what we were going to do. This was the story. It was a perfect story. But if you were to ask us at that time, what was the story and who the devil he was, we wouldn't have been able to tell you. Hadn't a clue. And do you know what? I think in my desperation today to find actually who he was, how he came about, I think I found it. I was looking up all manner of things, and I came across Madame Blavatsky and theosophy and mysticism and the paranormal. And you know, I've got to read this because I can't actually remember it all. There's a thing called the tulpa, and it's a paranormal being or object which is created through spiritual or mental powers. It refers to a type of willed or imagined being, and it's supposed to be completely sentient and independent. They have thoughts and emotions and a personality quite individually from their creators. Now, this guy, this ringmaster, has got away from us. I've written his story now 9 times. It's on version 9. I've lived with him for his last couple of years, and he's having adventures. He's having a love affair, the love of his life for the woman, a girl he's never seen. And his raison d'etre is to unblock those 4 people whose imagination has given up on them. And so he embarks, he meets somebody, a minstrel, and embarks upon an adventure. And just an example of the adventures, he arrives in a field of daffodils in which stands an iron gate. And by it, the man who is the keeper of that gate. There's no fence round the gate, so the ringmaster's path could have just taken him round it, and he would have carried on. But he knew that the way his path went was actually through that gate for the sake of the gatekeeper. So he passes through, their eyes meet, and as he goes on, he doesn't turn back to see or say goodbye, because he knows that the gatekeeper has disappeared. The gate has gone. The man whatever was wrong with him is made better. And he has many, many adventures, and they've all just arrived, and the music fits them beautifully. The wonderful piece we've just heard. Absolutely. Now, what more do you want, by the way, than something like that? That is a surely good example. Music at its finest to rival anything that Mr. Oldfield wrote, I believe. And well, I think there you have it. It's wonderful music, and it's a hell of a story. I've lived with it for several years now, so I'm very glad to have recognized the existence of this guy. He is imaginary, but he is also imagined. I think it would probably touch him. As for Rob, how we met, many, many years ago, I wrote and performed an album called The World is Good Night. And I have a letter from a very young Mr. Reed wanting a copy. He's never actually said what he thinks of it. Having heard his wonderful music, I dread to think what he thinks of it. But anyway, it was many years later, we met up in Reading. And I ended up apologizing for not replying to his request that I play on the first or second Sanctuary album. I think that's about it, really. You won't know anymore, by the way, about this Ringmaster, unless you do actually buy the album, because the story is not just the story. It's not just the cover, and it's not just the music, though that is the main thing about it. It's all three things, and they meld together to give you a much better picture than I possibly can, very quickly like this.
That sounds absolutely intriguing, Les. And will there be extracts or the full story that you've written provided as part of the album?
It will be, yes, in part 2. Album 2.
It'll all be there. The story will be there in various forms. As Les said, really, it works on all fronts. The music doesn't give you everything. The story doesn't give you everything. It's all combined, and the artwork all give you clues to it, really. But the biggest difference on this record, because I was sort of not bored really, but I just thought the first 3 albums were a mistake to call them Sanctuary 1, Sanctuary 2, Sanctuary 3. Because it's really hard to say, well, I like 6 minutes in on Sanctuary 3, part 2. Do you mean it doesn't? I think music needs to have a name or to conjure something, really. So on this album, I really wanted each bits of music to be tied to a story or whatever, really. I just sort of, if I'd gone Sanctuary 4, part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all this, I just think you just get lost. It all becomes one long thing, really. I think a bit of music needs to have subject matter and a title, so it'll stand on its own. And with this one, I'd ended up with like 100 minutes worth of music, and I thought, I can't really start in one go. It's just too much for people's attention span, and it's like beating someone over the head. So I wanted to split it into 2. And the plan is to release the first 50 minutes as one album, and then you got time to digest that. And then I'm going to wait another 2 or 3 years for the artist to make another record. The next bit will come in 3 months' time. So, you've digested that, taken it all in, and you want a bit more, and I'm going to wait forever for the next bit, really. But it's definitely different because there's shorter bits of music on it. There's it opens with a 15-minute epic, but then there's 2-minute tracks, there's 8-minute tracks, and it's only as long as the music needs. And I like the breather in it as well, so you can have a rest and again clean your musical palette and get back into it. And it takes you on a journey. The whole record takes you on a journey, and we spend a lot of time in the sequencing and the vibe and the feel and the ends of the tracks, but to work as one, really. But it is a Sanctuary album, but it's that in style. I think that's the genre, if you want to go that route with it. But I said the story, it all works together. Not one thing gives you the complete, and obviously you can make up the rest yourself, and you can adapt it. But to me, mainly the ringmaster is this bloody guy that sits on my shoulder that plays with me really when I'm in the studio, either giving me tunes or destroying me by giving me nothing really. That's my interpretation and what I take away from the story, and all artists have this person really, playing with them, toying with them.
That's interesting. So Sanctuary becomes the genre almost rather than the title. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that answers your question there, Kevin. And Stuart Manning and Adrian Major, you've also had your questions answered there by Rob. So at this point, I'd like to bring Tom in and run a couple of questions by Tom. Mr. Newman, could you unmute yourself, please, sir?
It is.
There we go.
Someone unmuted me without me knowing.
It was, see, the man of 1,000 buttons is on the other end of this, you see. I do know how to operate some of them. So Rob was talking there about, the creation of this and all the various aspects that I guess the team behind this album has brought together. And it was interesting to hear Rob talk about some of the aspects of a mix for you, where you might leave bits out, where you might emphasize certain bits. So I wanted to ask, how do you approach mixing an album, like The Ringmaster, with its vast number of tracks, its complexities and so on? What do you do? Where do you start? How do you go about that?
Well, having worked on the earlier Sanctuary albums, I'd sussed Rob's scheme. I mean, that sounds a bit, it's not, that's, well, anyway, all musicians, I mean, Rob particularly, what he's done is in being so influenced by Michael and taking in Michael's styles. Rob is a virtuoso on every instrument in the same way that Michael is. And what he saw in Michael's music was the fact that because no one else was doing it, when Michael dies, it will disappear until someone in 100 years' time starts to realize that there was actually, it was more than just the few albums that Michael did. Michael has created an entire genre of music, and Rob, as far as I can see, or at least in my eyes, he was the first one to have picked that up and realized the sanctity or the value of that, and it suited his virtuosity to express his own feelings through it. And in a way, what Rob's done is to initiate an actual movement, an actual genre of music that is entirely centered around the emotional. What Michael does so beautifully is with a few notes, he can exert an emotional effect on the listener. And Rob has recognized that and has the capability and the virtuosity to be able to do the same thing. And in a way, he's procreating Michael's legacy. And I found it a bit sad to start with when I started to look at the whole of the internet Mike Oldfield fan base, was that some people seem to find that kind of not on a bit, and I couldn't. I was annoyed about it because it seemed to me that Michael was like the Mozart of the 20th century, or that, because when Mozart first dared to be a twiddly young kid who was taking the sanctity of the religious music scene at the time and suddenly convert it into non-religious music that had a sense of joy in it. And the Catholic Church hates joy. You're not allowed to have joy unless it pays the Pope in some way. And that's the same with all religions, really. The sadness about religion. And Mozart broke that in one go. And Michael did the same thing in the middle of the kind of boring, cliched fucking nonsense that had been going on since Elvis. And Elvis was Elvis. Lonnie Donegan was the first punk, and nothing happened until, all that was repeated, and all of a sudden Michael came in and broke the mold of that nonsense and allowed people to become emotionally involved in a musical scenario that was graphic and cinematic and beautiful, and allowed you to explore your own fears and emotions without being connected to a genre. You didn't have to be a heavy metal freak or whatever. And Rob was the first person that I've come across who had that in him as well, with a sense of truth that I recognised. And so that's what got me involved. And I'm just very proud to be involved in it, really. I've forgotten what the question was.
That was a great answer to a question. That was my next question, actually, Tom. So thanks for that. And it's really interesting, I think, to hear you articulate, I guess, your connection with what Rob is trying to do and what Mike tried to do. Where do you think that essence comes from to be able to create music like that? What is it within somebody that I guess allows them to express themselves in a way that has that deep connection with people?
Well, I think as much as anything, it's having the self-conviction of the self, or just the brazen self-conviction to be able to say musically what you feel. I think there's so many music. The whole of the world of music is riddled, sadly, up to maybe 90% of the people who invent musical variations on whatever scale or whatever country or whatever culture you come from. They just repeat what's already been done. 99%. Including all of the so-called iconic rock bands and everybody else involved in the Western music industry. They're just repeating somebody else's crap, which was copying someone else's crap. Michael and Rob are the first people who, in the last century, who've broken that in any significant way and created a musical form that is entirely dependent upon the performer being able to demonstrate his emotional connection with the music without copying someone else's lick. and it's quite magnificent, you know. And it's rare as rock and roll shit, basically, because Rob is extending that genre into something that will, in 100 years' time, probably, and I'm a bit of a rare stuff. I mean, I think that this form of music is it's so easy to immerse yourself emotionally and get a response to back to yourself from it. You can delve into this kind of beautiful, and it doesn't have to be widdly. I mean, the structures and the use of the chords against a simple melody played with absolute emotion, it invites you to analyze your own situation and become part of a better world in a way.
Yeah, that's interesting, because there was a question from Mary Cook who was asking about this long form instrumental style, which has, you know, variations on a theme. You know, it might be instrumental, might have minimal use of vocals, and I guess just taking a question to the next level is why isn't there a genre created for this? If people connect with it so deeply and recognize some great value in it, why aren't there more people doing it, do you feel?
It's hard to do, because you have to reject the bollocks of all of the people, all of the media and everything that you've ever known about, that you've been bombarded with in the music business.
Tom, can you move closer to the mic? We're having trouble hearing you. There's quite a lot of interference.
You have to, I don't know, is that kind of...
Yeah, I think so. I think
the music business presents you with a fait accompli set of genres and rules that are all strictly divided and known, and they're all... I mean, if you do any music at all, when you try and make a copy of something, it says, what do you want to call this? And there's a whole list of what is it, that would be and the list is about...
Tom, sorry to interrupt you. The white noise on your connection has just kind of gone through the roof, and we're all struggling to hear you. So I think what I'd like to do now is I'll mute you, and we'll just go to the next piece of music to see if you can possibly, I don't know, maybe reset your mic or something.
I'm not doing anything. I'm just talking into the mic of the computer.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the white noise is coming, or it's definitely coming from you. If I mute you, it stops. So what I'll do, I'll just move to the next track, and then I don't know if Tom, if you want to leave and rejoin the meeting, perhaps that might be something to try. There we go. That's a cracking extract there. Just kind of faded out before it goes into a really lovely bit. But for those of you that buy it, you'll get to hear that when it comes out. So
Simon Phillips on drums.
yes,
Might be.
yeah, completely recognisable. Yes, that was a great shout to have him play that. Very bombastic.
Mm.
So that was extract number 3. I'm not sure if I think Tom has left. He's probably going to be rejoining. So we'll come back to him if there's time. So just moving over to a couple of questions from folks that have written in. So Stuart, you've had your question answered about the name of the album, and Adrian, Rob's answered your question about why there's a part 1 and a part 2. Mary, we've covered your question around the genre and the type of composition. So here's a question that's probably on a number of people's lips, written in by Russell Cashman and Dennis Jones. Are you intending to premiere the album and perform live anytime soon? Sorry to put you on the spot. Do you need a glass? Do you need a glass of water?
I do. Well, yeah, I think playing it live. I say we did the shows in Real World. God, was that about 4 or 5 years ago? And the one up in Cheltenham. But I'd love to do it again. But it's such a massive undertaking, really, to get 13, 14 people together to play it. And it was such a nerve-wracking experience to play these long pieces in one go. And if one person gets lost and you've got 14 people playing, it's such a pressure pot to actually pull it off, really, and for it to work. But saying all that, I think it is overdue another torturous live gig. So I think next year, hopefully, we'll do something where we play bits from all the albums and bits of this new one with Mr. Penn in a nice leather chair, in amongst us all, reading the story, doing his best, Jack and Ori. And yeah, I think I will do it, but it's not, well, it is a pleasurable experience, but it's also torturous as well, in a sort of self-inflicted kind of way to play it, because it's just so hard that just to look around and see 13 or 14 people all on a knife edge at the maximum of their playing ability and trying to remember these long bits of music. But it was amazing, again, to actually to look around and to see them all play, and that was brilliant as well. So I think hopefully next year, it's just been, with all this going on, it's been a nightmare to put anything in the book, really, as far as live shows, and it's only now everyone is slowly getting back into it. But I would love to do it and play bits of all the album, play some of Les's tunes, and and do a big show. So fingers crossed.
Okay, and yeah, I guess we look forward to that. I mean, I think we can appreciate it's a huge undertaking. For those of you that pick up one of the special editions of the album, there's a special performance from Rob playing a number of the tracks across all 4 albums on a special DVD released with one of the special editions. But we'll get to that a little bit later. And final question here from Gerald Jordan. He'd really like to see you release some kind of lossless version of your stuff. Is that something that is on the cards for you?
I missed that then. I missed what the question was.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Gerald Jordan was asking if you might release some of your music on DVD or some form of lossless format.
Oh, well, yeah, possibly. Again, it's because of the manufacturing cost to do high-end audio in a hard copy that it's not really feasible to do, really. But I do love the 5.1 mixes, and the mixes I've done of this album in particular, which I listened to in this room, sound absolutely incredible. It transforms the album, and the reaction to the 5.1 mixes have been amazing, really. And it's a great format, but it's just not many people have got the system to listen to it, really. So you're only doing it for a handful of people really that have got the system, which is a shame really, until they sort out the headphones with which Apple are doing at the moment with the Atmos with the surround, so you can use surrounding headphones.
Yeah,
that will definitely bridge the gap so everybody can hear the album. But you know, the CD is close to what I record at. I don't record at high end sample rates and stuff, so you know, you're in basically what I'm hearing in the speakers on the CD to some extent. But you know, the 5.1 is definitely, if you can do it, to hear it, this music lends itself to it really, with the amount of tracks that I take to make these long pieces of music really.
I guess you could release, you know, a FLAC version on download, perhaps as well, if people want
I'll do that, and yeah. So everything's going digitally anyway, eventually. So then, what I hear in the studio will be exactly what will come down the digital stream.
Yeah, and I you know, I guess maybe a 5.1 listening party or something might be an idea to think about as well.
I would have done it, you know. I would normally do that kind of thing, but it's been so hard over the last 2 years to do anything really, to plan things. But you know, who knows? Hopefully.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's good. Well, I know we've run over time. Thanks for everybody for joining this evening. Thanks, Rob. Thank you, Les. Thank you, Tom, for your responses to the questions and so on. That's been really good. The album artwork, as somebody's just asked on the chat, is the same as will be released on the CD that comes out in October. There's a few special editions. There's an ultimate, very limited edition in a tin. And there's a complete Ringmaster set available in an A5 slipcase. They'll be available on tigermothshop.co.uk from about 11 o'clock this evening. So again, thank you to Rob, Tom, and Les for joining us this evening. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us. And so we're going to play out this evening with a final extract of the album, if I can get my buttons and things to work. So yeah, thanks everybody. And when the pieces stop playing, then I'll stop recording and I'll end the meeting. If you haven't had the opportunity to have your question asked, then please head over to the Tubular World group on Facebook, posted on there, and I'll see if I can get Rob, Les, or Tom to respond to the questions on the group rather than here. So without further ado, here comes extract number 4. So enjoy, have a good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Rob. And hope everybody looks forward to the pre-release. So that'll be available later on this evening, UK time, in about a couple of hours on tigermothshop.co.uk. So I'm now going to play extract number 4.
Very short, aren't they? Very short excerpts.
Oh gosh, yeah. You
Sorry.
really, you didn't share much, Rob. You didn't give much away, but I think you gave away the essence of what the album is about, which I think we're all very grateful for. So thanks for sharing those clips, and thanks again to Tom, Les, and of course Rob for taking the time out of their evening to spend that with us. And thank you all again for joining us. And I'm sure our paths will cross on some other events like this maybe in the future, and stay tuned for a few other surprises coming up over the next few months. Okay, so thanks everybody.
Can you hear me now?
Take care.
He's there. He's back. We were going, but you're back.
You're back.
What was you saying?
I had to download some updates from Zoom.
Oh, okay.
I'm better now for the future, just to know.
Have a rant.
Hello.
Hello. No hiss now, Tom. It sounds perfect.
Oh, right. Well, maybe it was I needed updating.
You needed an update.
I'm sorry I was rambling a bit, so you probably were quite right cutting me off.
Oh, no.
With your applied white noise button. I know those tricks.
Yes, I know. That sounds good. All right, folks. Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of the
Any more from Tom, or is that it?
Oh, yeah, we can do some more. I've got it.
Maybe want another couple of more. He's back now, isn't he?
Go on. Has anyone got a question for Tom? Post it in the chat, and then or just unmute yourself and ask Tom directly if you wish.
Ooh. Nobody wants to know about. I'm only the fucking producer. Nobody. Talk about the producer. It's brilliant, Rob.
Let's give a question. Do you enjoy punishing me and breaking me? Is it you're like something like an army general to me? Is that where you get the pleasure from?
Rob, all I'm trying to do is to wheedle out what it is that's in your soul, because at the moment you're talking through Michael's soul, and I want to hear what your soul wants to say, and that's why I give you stick from time to time. And obviously you always put too much in.
I do.
The thing is that right from the beginning of the Ringmaster stuff, you've changed, you've constantly written new stuff, and yet it's still only supposed to be 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And I've got about 120 minutes of stuff per thing, and I've had to try and find the bits that work best. So I'm sorry if I've rubbed out bass parts and drumming parts. Although having said that, the great thing is that I've got a whole stock of the drummer. I can't mention his name because I've got to be careful, because I'm going to use his drum tracks on the Fine Old Tom album.
You can't do that. You can, but
No.
that's great.
That's why I'm not going to mention his name. He wouldn't mind.
No, it'd be fine. It'd be fine.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, Tom. Yeah, that's a bit of reuse, isn't it? A bit of musical reuse going on there.
Absolutely.
Recycling.
Yeah, sampling.
I mean, who else would have the opportunity to use a famous drummer's parts without them knowing, or even if he knows, I'm not going to give him anything, so he's not going to do it.
That's brilliant. Yeah. And with all those Peter has called them offcuts, Rob, are you going to release any of those offcuts, or are they going to form part of a little bag of stuff you might come back to in the future?
Well, when I retire, I could go through some of these and the stuff that's been put on the floor, the edits that have gone on the floor. I might go through some of them and create a whole new Rob Reed album that he doesn't even know about.
Yeah, you could do that. That'd be all right. No, but it's good to do that. I think there's a couple of bonus tracks on the bonus disc, which bits that didn't make it on it, but they have to earn, they keep the bits really. So it was good to be enlightened by what works and what doesn't. So yeah, it's for the better.
Great stuff, Rob. Well done.
All right.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's really good to. I really think
I'm very proud to be working with you, Rob. You got
Thank you,
another,
John.
and Les as well. I mean,
Yeah.
they're gone to bed now, so
It's great. It's a good team. Good team.
yeah, it is. Yeah,
And I think combined, you've created something which really takes the Sanctuary series to another level. Certainly, the stuff that I've heard, it's really ramped up a notch without question. And for those of you that are itching to get your hands on it, you will be able to pre-order it later. But maybe just take a couple of minutes just to talk about the format of the release. That's been released in two parts. The first part is available in October. There are 3 discs in the first part. There's the main album. Second CD includes bonus tracks and the full album mixed by Tom. And then there's a DVD with a 5.1 surround mix. Somebody was asking about promo videos on the chat. There's a bunch of promo videos on there.
Crazy promo videos.
Yes, and an interview as well. And there'll also be an option to buy the complete Ringmaster, which will be as a VIP edition with 7 discs. That includes signed postcards, stickers, the Ringmaster story that Les was referring to. Yeah, lots of goodies.
Yeah.
And there's a piano performance as well, Rob, that you did. Was that, can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did it last year. During the lockdown, I could get in the studio on my own and play this lovely £100,000 grand piano, really, and just played tracks from all the albums, really, including the new stuff. Just did arrangements of that, and it was a bit risky to do because you couldn't make any mistakes. You can't drop in on a piano very well, but no, it was good. It was really enjoyable. So the tracks really work, and it shows again at the heart of it all is some good melodies and tunes, really. So that's all on there.
Excellent. That sounds good. And I know you were talking about doing it's like a super special edition. Is that still on the cards?
I'm not sure yet. Yeah, so we're looking at the moment what to do with it, really. But it's good. Some good stuff in there.
All right, sounds good. All right, excellent. So I think that really is it. I've got to head off now. Thanks everybody again. It's been a real pleasure to MC this for Rob and Les and Tom. Really enjoyed doing that. I hope you've all enjoyed yourselves too. And we'll catch up some point in the future, I'm sure. Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. Or good morning, or good day, wherever you happen to be. Right.
Bye.
Take care.
See you, Rob. See you, John. Paul. Sorry.
Bye, Tom. Bye, Les. Bye, Rob. Bye, everyone else.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.